It's hard to know where a story like this begins. People say start at the beginning, but life doesn't work that way. It's just a mess of choices and coincidences that blur together. So I'll start with what matters. I'm not smart. Ask anyone who knows me. They'll say I'm reliable, responsible, whatever, but I've made stupid mistakes, the kind that stick with you. Still, I'm not a bad guy, not good maybe, but not cruel. I don't even hate my mother, and she probably deserves it. Anyway, here's the problem. My roommate is normal. And that's what makes him terrifying. He just left the apartment a few minutes ago. The moment the door closed, I felt this wave of relief, like breaking the surface after being underwater too long. Because this guy, he's messing with me in ways I can't explain. No one notices him, he blends in so perfectly it's like he was designed to be forgettable. And somehow, he's ruining my life. So let me rewind. It was summer, about a month ago. I'd just been promoted to assistant manager at Whataburger and was finally ready to move out of my sister's spare room. Rent in my city is insane, but I found a decent two-bedroom for $770. I could barely afford it alone, so I started looking for a roommate. After a couple weeks of filtering out the weirdos, I found Mike. 26, same age as me, office job, normal hobbies, didn't smoke or drink. My sister Jen helped me vet him, everything checked out. She came to meet him at the end of my shift. It was quiet, around 3 p.m. I'd told him, I finish at 3, so swing by then. And I swear the exact second the clock hit 3, he walked through the door. Nothing seemed strange at the time. He was polite, well-spoken, normal face, normal smile. Jen shrugged afterward and said, better than a crackhead, seems normal. That word again, normal. But Mike has one of those faces like an extra in an old TV show. Always there, never noticed. If you ask me to describe him now, I'd struggle. Brownish hair, brownish eyes, maybe no scars, no features that stick, just average. The first week living together was fine. He cleaned up, kept quiet, didn't bother me, we didn't talk much. He wasn't the type. I thought we each had our own lives. My job keeps me busy, long hours, lots of responsibility because my manager, Mr. Dixon, we call him Dick, is never around. I don't mind. It keeps me tired enough not to think too hard about anything. On Sundays, if I'm off, I visit Jen. She's the only person I've ever really trusted. It's always been us against the world. I wish she were here now. Because everything changed 2 days ago. It was a normal Saturday. I left home at 7 a.m. Mike was already awake, sitting on the couch, staring at the TV with his back to me. I'm heading out, I said. I'll be here, he answered the same way he always does. After the lunch rush, I was behind the counter talking to a new hire, and then, the moment the clock hit 3, Mike was there. I didn't hear the door open, I didn't hear anything. 1 second everything was normal and the next this pressure hit me like the whole world suddenly turned to look at me. My skin prickled, my stomach dropped. It felt like being caught doing something shameful. I turned and there he was, cargo shorts, white t-shirt, the most average customer imaginable, and he was staring at me, hard. I forced a smile, took his order, tried to act normal, but he didn't look away, not once. He ordered a double meat meal, simple, ordinary. But I felt frozen, trapped, sweating through my uniform while the kitchen beeped behind me. And he just kept staring. He stepped aside, still staring at me. My hands shook as I packed his order, eyes glued to the sauce trays because I couldn't bring myself to look at him again. I tossed in every sauce without asking. Dick would have chewed me out for that. When I handed him the box, I made the mistake of glancing up. His eyes burned through me. Not angry, not curious. Just knowing. It felt like he could see every secret I'd ever buried, every shameful thought, every stupid mistake. My stomach twisted, my ears rang. For a second I thought I'd pass out right there behind the counter. Then he simply said, thanks, and walked out. I ran to the bathroom and sat there shaking for 10 minutes before I could breathe normally again. When I came back out, the new hire gave me a weird look. You good, man? Yeah, just hot in here, I lied. I asked him if he'd noticed anything strange about the guy who'd just come in. He blinked. Which guy? Cargo shorts, white tee, he was right here. Oh, him, Nat, dude was normal, barely noticed him. That word again, normal. So normal he practically dissolved into the wallpaper. By the end of my shift, around 10 p.m., I still felt sick thinking about it. I didn't want to go home, not while he was awake. So when Dick showed up and asked if I wanted to hit the bar, I said yes. It was one of those grimy dives he loved: sticky floors, neon signs, pool tables with torn felt, Creed blasting from the jukebox. Dick was already half drunk, spilling over his stool. I nursed a beer, trying to calm down. Eventually I told him I had a weird customer today. Freaked me out. He perked up. Was it that tweaker from 16th? I banned his ass after he awed in the bathroom. No, this guy was normal, too normal. Dick stared at me confused. Maybe he had a crush on you, he giggled, already losing interest. Hours later, around 2 a.m., I came to my senses walking down the street toward my apartment. I must have shared Dick's Uber, but I barely remembered anything. I was drunk, stumbling, letting the night carry me. Then I turned the corner and sobered up instantly. My building stood there, quiet, harmless, but every instinct in my body screamed danger. Something ancient, primal, the kind of fear that doesn't come from your mind but from your bones. He was watching me. I couldn't see him from the street, but I knew he was there, at the window, staring. Maybe he'd been standing there for hours. My heart hammered, sweat soaked through my jacket. But what else could I do? It was 2 a.m. and I lived there, so I walked forward step by step, feeling his gaze like a spotlight burning into my skin. A small logical voice tried to reassure me. He's just a guy, just a roommate, just a weird stare. But I knew better. I didn't look up at the window when I reached the building. I didn't want him to see fear. When I moved out of his line of sight, the pressure lifted slightly. I climbed the metal stairs, each step clanging under my feet, and felt a little safer. Then I reached the door. 3B. Plain white. Peephole staring back at me like an unblinking eye. I stood there with the key in my hand. Could have been 2 minutes, could have been 2 hours. Was he on the other side, watching? Or asleep? Finally, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything looked normal: TV, couch, fan, router, Jen's magnets on the fridge. Except the window. It was open, curtains drifting in the cold night breeze. I walked to it and looked out. I could see the exact spot where I'd stood moments earlier, where the street lamp would have lit me up perfectly. My skin crawled. I turned toward Mike's bedroom door, closed, silent. Either he wasn't home or he was asleep. Exhaustion hit me all at once. I shut the window, pulled the curtains tight, slipped into my room, locked the door, slid the deadbolt quietly into place, and collapsed onto the bed. The next morning, I woke up sticky, reeking of sweat and alcohol, head pounding like someone was drilling behind my eyes. I'd passed out without turning on the AC, and the Texas heat had cooked me alive all night. My phone was at 2% when I checked it. Great start. I showered, brushed my teeth, tried to feel human again. But the second my hand touched the doorknob, yesterday slammed back into me: the stare at Whataburger, the window, the feeling of being hunted. In daylight, it all felt stupid, irrational. I was hungover, tired, and pissed at myself for being scared of my own roommate. I yanked the door open. The TV was blaring canned laughter. Mike sat on the couch, back perfectly straight, watching an old rerun of The Big Bang Theory, except he wasn't laughing. He wasn't reacting at all. He sat like a mannequin, rigid, unmoving, staring dead ahead. "Hey," I managed. "Yes," he answered, and for the first time I noticed how wrong his voice was: not monotone. Flat. Like a sound file with all the life edited out. The laugh track exploded behind him. He didn't blink. "I'm going out for the day," I said. "I'll be here." The words hit different this time, not friendly, not neutral. A promise. A threat. I bolted. Halfway down the street, I realized I'd forgotten my phone, but there was no way I was going back. I drove off, still drunk enough that I stopped at Burger King for a greasy lunch and a terrible coffee. It didn't sober me up, but at least I didn't crash on the way to Jen. She opened the door, short, tattooed, and already judging me. "You could have called." "Forgot my phone, crazy morning." Her apartment looked nicer without me living in it: clean, modern, bright. The spare room where I'd lived for years was empty now. That stung more than I expected. "So," she said, "why are you here?" I collapsed onto her couch. "It's my roommate." "What's his name again?" Mike, I think. You think, she laughed, don't you talk to the guy. No. No. I'm scared of him. Her face changed instantly. Why, drugs? No, he's just wrong. She pushed. I tried to explain, the stare, the feeling, the way he sat frozen in front of the TV, the way he said I'll be here like a threat. At first she thought I was relapsing, that hurt more than anything, but after I told her everything last night this morning she finally softened. So he just sat there not laughing. Nothing, not a blink. Well, it was the Big Bang Theory, she said, trying to joke. Jen. Okay, I get it, he's creeping you out. So what do I do? She leaned back. I'll talk to him. What? I'll mediate, figure out what his problem is. Relief washed over me. Jen always had my back, always. We talked for almost an hour. She agreed to come with me, confront him, help me sort this out. I stood to grab my keys and glanced out the window. What the fuck? Jen rushed over. Across the street, perfectly still, perfectly upright, was Mike. Watching. Jen stiffened. He isn't moving. Nope. She stormed off to her room, came back with her purse, digging through it furiously. What are you doing? No one stalks my little brother, she snapped, pulling out a small spray bottle. What's that? Mace dipshit. She only called me that when she was furious. She headed for the door, eyes blazing. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, bro. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt a flicker of hope. At least I had my sister. I don't know if it's been one day or two, everything's a blur. As soon as I finished writing the last part, I grabbed my laptop, threw everything in the car and drove as far and as fast as I could. Some of you said I shouldn't be afraid of Mike. You weren't there. You didn't hear him through the door. You didn't watch him tear apart the closest relationship I had with a few quiet words. He's a monster. And after today, I've decided I'm going to kill him first. I'm holed up in a cheap motel about an hour and a half north near the Oklahoma border. I don't know why I drove north. My parents live half an hour east, though I swore I'd never go back there. But with Jen gone, blocked me on everything, their house is the only place left. I called Dick that first night. Hey Dick. Hey champ, better not be calling out tomorrow, we might have a no-show. Look man, I'm really sorry, but I'm dealing with some heavy personal shit right now. He grumbled, not very team player of you, it's about trust if I can't trust. Dick, I cut him off, scrambling for a lie. It's my roommate, he's into some serious stuff, dealer or something. He tried to kill me, I called the cops but I need to hide for a few days. Silence. A long one. Damn man, he finally said, I knew you had a rough past when I hired you. I'm clean, Dick, I didn't do anything. This guy brought all that shit back into my life, I just want to work hard, be like you. He softened immediately. You're the best assistant manager I've ever had, handle your business, I'll keep things running. Relief washed over me, at least I still had a job. Thanks Dick, really. Anytime son, and thank you for choosing Whataburger. That was that. By then it was almost 10 p.m. I walked to a grimy little diner near the motel. The land was flat and dead under the black sky, broken only by the sick amber glow of streetlights. Across the road stood a tiny church, brick building, pointed roof, big white cross glowing under ground lights. It pulled my eyes like a magnet. I sat in a peeling red vinyl booth, staring at that church while I waited for my food. I've never believed, Jen didn't either. Our parents did, but we always thought it was childish stories for people who couldn't handle reality. But staring at that lonely church in the middle of nowhere, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Fear. Guilt. Memory. When I was younger, I wasn't sensible. I made stupid choices to impress a girl and lost everything anyway. Rehab, dropping out, the whole mess. And now it feels like all of it is coming back for me. We used to go to church as a family. I sat through sermons, flipped through Exodus and Psalms, watched my big sister sit there with her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. Back then, it made the whole Bible feel like a spooky story adults used to keep kids in line. Now I'm not so sure. Not after everything I've done. Everything I regret. Everything I've never told anyone. My chicken tenders arrived lukewarm and dry like the desert outside the diner. I choked them down with Diet Coke, trying to drown my fear with cold logic. If someone up there is judging me, that's their problem. Later. Maybe not much later. I couldn't stop staring at the church across the road. And then I saw him, standing at the base of the cross like some silent executioner. My roommate. He was watching me. Watching so intensely my skin crawled. My Honda was parked at the motel next door, close enough to sprint to, yet it felt impossibly far. I threw some crumpled bills on the table and bolted for the door. Even from across the street, I felt his gaze lock onto mine. Calling his eyes unnatural would be like calling hellfire a bit warm. He didn't just see me, he saw through me. I felt exposed like prey in an empty field with hawks circling overhead. My legs carried me backward toward the motel. He didn't move. Gray hoodie, cargo pants, the most average man alive except for those eyes. My calves hit something behind me and the spell broke. I stumbled into the motel parking lot, collapsed against the bumper of my beat-up Civic, and for a moment I could have kissed the spot where the Honda emblem used to be before someone stole it. But panic shoved me forward. I dove into the driver's seat, slammed the car into drive, and the engine roared awake. I flicked on the headlights. He was there. At the far end of the lot, just past the speed bump. Still staring. I didn't look at his eyes this time, I focused on his mouth. I couldn't hear him, but I could see the word forming over and over. Confess. He was mouthing it when I released the parking brake. Still mouthing it as I tore across the lot toward him. Still mouthing it as I hit the speed bump so hard the headlights shot upward. And when the car came crashing down at nearly 50 mph, he was gone. I swerved so hard I almost plowed into the church as I fled east, like a man being chased by the devil himself. My parents lived on an old ranch and I made the drive in under 22 minutes. The night was empty and I drove with my headlights off just in case he was following me. Parking my tiny Civic next to my dad's massive F-150 made it look like a toy. The whole ranch had that effect: big 3-story house, wraparound porch, American flag and Texas star hanging side by side. Picture perfect, fake as hell. I sat there for a while, engine off, night breeze slipping through the cracked window. The living room lights were on, curtains drawn. I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe he dove out of the way, maybe I imagined the whole thing. There had to be a normal explanation. My phone buzzed. 11:54 p.m. An email from Whataburger Corporate. I'd been fired. Panic surged as I checked my messages. Under DIC KED boss, I found a string of missed texts. 22:22, call me urgent. 22:26, you lied to me champ, call me now, urgent. 22:49, he told me everything, I called the cops, told them all that shit you told me. 22:49, if you show up here you're dead. 22:49. 22:50, didn't mean to send that. That was it. My roommate had taken my apartment, my sister, and now my crappy job. He wouldn't even let me eat dry chicken in peace. I stepped out of the car and headed toward the porch. The door opened. My dad stood there, silhouetted by the light behind him, holding a shotgun like some grim deity. I recognized it instantly, his old Remington 870, the one I used to shoot my first hog. Jen called, he growled. Said you might come by, said I shouldn't let you set foot in this house, said I should call the cops and be done with you. He stood like a statue, shotgun resting against his chest, not pointed at me but close enough to hurt. Yeah, I said, things went to shit, Dad. He didn't move. I don't know what she told you, I could make excuses but you wouldn't believe me. He lowered the shotgun slightly, of course I wouldn't. What does she think I did this time? No idea, she was crying though, I do like when you make my daughter cry. I shrugged, remembering which one of us had made her cry more. I let it go. I don't like it either, I wish I knew what I did. My dad flinched, you can't remember, you back on that stuff. The accusation hit harder than the shotgun ever could. No, Dad, I haven't touched anything in years, haven't even had a beer in days. He finally deflated a little, he looked old. His beard, once thick and black, was now gray. His eyes were tired, his face lined with 100 small disappointments. "She said you were sober," he muttered. "Said that much, and I can't imagine you driving all the way out here high. What do you want? We don't have money, so don't ask." It hurt. More than I expected. I'd worked so hard these last 5 years, stayed clean, held a job, went to therapy, moved out, tried to build a life. But to him, I was still just a junkie looking for another fix. My breaths came out uneven, my cheeks burning with something I couldn't name, anger, shame, fear, all tangled together. It took a long time before I could speak again. "I'm leaving Dad far away." I pulled out my wallet and showed him the wad of cash, everything I had, $9,000, years of scraping by, saving every spare cent. "I'll start over somewhere, maybe head north, maybe cross the border." There was a sharpness in his voice when he asked, "We'll see." I didn't answer. He stepped aside and let me in. Whatever the Bible said about suicide, he clearly thought I was already damned. The house hadn't changed. Same polished wood floors, same ugly green wallpaper. My mother sat in her old chair, small and hollowed out, but I didn't go near her. I stayed at the foot of the stairs. "Mind if I say goodbye to my old room?" My father, homophobic, stubborn, devout and loud, nodded. "He's many things. And in one way we're exactly alike. He's an idiot." He sat back down, shotgun resting at his feet. Upstairs, the third floor held the 3 bedrooms, mine and Jen's across from each other. I didn't look at them. I went straight to the master bedroom, no lock, just like when I was a kid. The closet was the same too. Sunday clothes on one side, and dominating the rest, the massive 6-foot gun safe. The last time I stood here, I was on the edge of the biggest mistake of my life. I'd promised myself I'd never go back to who I was. The keypad looked exactly the same. Surely he'd changed the code after everything that happened. I typed 1219. Jen's birthday. The idiot. The safe clicked open. Inside was my father's shrine, rifles for birds, rifles for hogs, R-15s, R-10s, lever actions, bolt actions, antiques, war relics, boxes of ammunition stacked like bricks, a museum of Texas masculinity. But my eyes went to the door shelf. The handguns. Between the polished heirlooms, the 1911 my great-grandfather carried in the war, the .44 Magnum straight out of Dirty Harry, my hand drifted toward a plain Glock. Maybe it was instinct, maybe irony, maybe something darker. I took the Glock 20, a polymer holster, a box of 10 rounds and 2 spare magazines. I tucked everything away, waistband, jacket, pockets, until I looked like myself again. Downstairs, I faced what was left of my family. My father gray and angry. My mother frail and ghost-like, wrapped in a dirt-colored blanket, eyes sunken and empty. Jen had been right. Mom wasn't trapped, she was choosing to stay, choosing to wither, choosing nothing. I didn't hate her. Worse, I felt nothing at all. "Goodbye," I said, hollow. And I left. Pulling the Civic back onto the road, I checked the rearview mirror. My stomach dropped, though I'd expected it. Mike stood on the porch, talking to my father like they were old friends. I hit the gas. The first gunshots cracked behind me. My father stood at the fence line, firing into the night. I was already too far for anything to reach me, but the feeling your own father shooting at you stuck like ice in my spine. Mike was gone again, no car, no sound, no explanation. Whatever he wasn't human. And I wasn't going to let him take anything else from me. I drove north, away from everything. Past the ranch, past the city, into the empty sprawl of northern Texas. My mind drifted to all the people who could have been my roommate instead, the grad student who played League, the European guy obsessed with American girls, the wannabe rapper, the conspiracy theorist from Dallas. Anyone but Mike. In Perriton, I turned south, cutting through endless plains under moonlight. In Pampa, around 1 a.m., I stopped at Taco Bell. They glared at me for coming in 5 minutes before closing. I didn't care. I kept driving east, Crunchwrap cooling in its wrapper, Baja Blast turning warm and flat. The world slid by unnoticed. There was something peaceful about the night. The road stretched forever, and for a moment it felt like I had all the time in the world. But I knew better. There was no escape. Whatever was happening was beyond anything I could control or understand. Jen gets anxious when things spiral, biting her nails, tugging her hair. I never did. To me, you only worry about what you can control. If it's bigger than you, war, politics, the news, even workplace drama that isn't about you, why bother? But this was about me. And it was coming. I collapsed onto her couch. It's my roommate. Maybe that's why I fell into drugs so easily back in high school. When you're young, you have no control, not at home, not at school, not anywhere. Drugs felt like a choice, a rebellion, a way to push back, until the choice disappears and the addiction chooses for you. Getting high becomes the center of your universe. Everything else, school, hygiene, friends, falls behind like debris in a storm. I stopped somewhere near the Oklahoma border on a nameless patch of roadside dirt, ate my stale Crunchwrap, drank my warm Baja Blast, and it tasted like the best meal of my life. I thought about what was coming. By morning, either I'd die or Mike would. There was something almost peaceful about that finality. Every minute under the moon felt like borrowed happiness. If I don't write again, I'm probably rotting in some ditch out here. A lot happened. I need to confess. The police are already on their way. So I guess I should start from the beginning of today. I slept a little in the Civic. The seats recline all the way back, not comfortable, especially when you haven't showered in days and you're lying on a holster digging into your hip, but I must have dozed off. Because the next thing I saw was sunrise. At some point during the night, I crossed into Oklahoma. Funny how crossing a state line feels like crossing into another world. The dry, endless Texas plains gave way to green fields, oak groves, and a sky so clean it looked new. I watched the sun spill silver light across the clouds. I loved that sunrise. It might be the last one I ever see. Eventually, I kept driving, north at an unmarked crossroads. Breakfast in Cheyenne, my last meal as a free man, I joked to myself. A burrito, sweet tea, and the weight of the last few days pressing on me like a cross. Black Kettle National Grassland wasn't new to me. I'd driven these roads before. You might wonder why I kept going instead of turning back. Why run if I planned to confront Mike? Because I knew he'd meet me where I was going. He knew the place. And he knew what I'd done. North then east. A nameless town. A dirt road cutting north-south. Drive a few miles. And there it was. The prairie stretched wild and uneven, brush, scattered trees, rolling hills. On one of those hills stood a lone oak. And beneath its twisted branches lay a man named Peter. Mike was already there just as I knew he would be, jeans, leather jacket, standing in the oppressive heat like it meant nothing. His face, I still can't describe it. It was beyond comprehension. I approached slowly, trying to look casual, trying not to reveal the storm inside me. 15 meters. 9. 3. I stopped. He stood over the shallow grave, silent, waiting. I moved, instinct, muscle memory, fear, rage, and the world cracked open around us. But nothing changed. He didn't fall. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just stood there untouched, as if reality itself refused to acknowledge what I'd done. My heart sank. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd always known I would. It felt like being dragged back into a classroom as a kid, forced to face a test you tried everything to avoid. No escape, no excuses, just the truth staring you down. I had lost long before this moment. Before Mike moved in. Before I left home. Before Peter. Before the first time I stole the very thing I held in my hand. Before the heroin. Before Lily. My arms dropped. The weight of everything I'd ever done pressed down on me. "Look at me," he said. His voice wasn't human. Perfectly balanced. Perfectly cold. Perfectly inescapable. My eyes rose on their own. And when I met his gaze, I understood, not him, not fully, never fully, but enough to know what stood before me. A being older than nations. A judge of things beyond human morality. A witness to ancient wars and timeless evils. A keeper of scales no mortal could comprehend. He had seen my guilt. And he had come to weigh it. "Peter waits below," he said, "for trumpets and voices from above. Is that just?" I knew it was. There are plans greater than any of you. It is not your place to take a life. I fell to my knees. I had told myself Peter's death was an accident. A twist of fate. A mistake. But I knew better. Are you worthy of forgiveness? He asked. Are you responsible enough to admit your failure? No. I never had been. I'd hidden behind Jen, behind addiction, behind excuses. I'd never taken responsibility for anything. Go to hell, I muttered, the last spark of defiance in a life built on running. He didn't move, but he seemed to grow brighter, taller, heavier. I have cast down serpents greater than you, he said. Confess, and this can end. He wanted the truth. The real truth. The one I'd buried deeper than Peter. So here it is. September 24th, 2017. Me and Lily skipped school like always. I'd stolen a couple $100 from my dad. We went to our dealer. We got high. We passed out. Only I woke up. She didn't. Cold. Still. Covered in everything a body releases when it shuts down. I left her there. Her parents found her the next day. The police wanted to talk to me, but I was already gone. I ran to Oklahoma. Later that night, still half delirious, I called our dealer, pretended Lily was alive, pretended she wanted more, pretended she wanted him. He believed me. I told him to meet me near her house. Said we were too messed up to drive. He came. And what happened next? I've never told anyone. Most people never see what real violence does to a body. I wish I hadn't. Peter wasn't who I thought he was. He wasn't my dealer. He was just a stranger, someone who probably stopped to help a kid alone in the dark. And I destroyed him. I hid what I could, abandoned his car, and fled blind through the night. I buried him under that oak tree, cleaned myself up with wet wipes, used his money for a motel room, and pretended nothing had happened. Then the news came. A single father, 2 daughters, working 2 jobs. Missing. I didn't have to fake the grief when Jen told me they'd found Lily. Some part of me had still hoped she'd walk through the door. That day broke me. After I buried Peter, I spent years drowning myself in drugs, in lies, in anything that kept me from facing what I'd done. I stole from Jen, from her friends, from my parents, from anyone who still cared. My father hadn't always been a monster. I remembered our first hunting trip, how proud he'd been. My mother had once been warm, soft, full of love. I drained them both dry. Turned their hearts to stone long before they kicked me out. Jen carried me through every disaster I created: rehab, therapy, jobs, housing. I gave nothing back. I was a parasite. A void. I stole my parents' joy. I stole my sister's time and love. And I stole a father from his daughters. When I finally said it out loud, all of it, Michael listened. He didn't speak. He didn't judge. He simply watched, and under that ancient, impossible gaze, I felt smaller than I ever had. So I called 911. The operator sounded like an older woman, gentle, patient. She listened as I filled in the missing pieces of a nearly decade-old murder case. She told me officers were on their way. That they'd be armed. That I shouldn't make any sudden moves. And then Michael was gone. So here I am. After a lifetime of taking, I finally gave something back, a confession, pathetic and late, but mine. It's all I had left to offer. If you followed this far, thank you. And yeah, it's cliché, but it turns out the real monster was me all along. I can hear the sirens now. There's still time to panic. Still time to burn. I have a weapon, a few magazines, and a choice. By the time you read this, the world will already know how it ended.